this review will contain spoilers and Robert Frost, so watch out, boys! Oh, if ever there was a category of video games that I would consider highbrow, it is definitely the point-and-click genre. How bold they are to limit the player's influence over the world to a few measly controls and trite options. I can certainly respect creating a project with set limitations in mind, and it's not easy coming up with sterling gameplay when all you can do is talk, examine, drop, or shove things up your fat ass. Sure, that might get you through a trip to the zoo, but some situations call for a more, let's say, delicate touch. But you know, by keeping things simple, at least in the number of buttons you can press, these games really have to step up and impress the player with more than just addictive gameplay. And one such game that really caught my eye was Grim Fandango. I mean, it's about Mexican skeletons navigating through the land of the dead in a noir-style mystery game. What's not to like? And it's one of the old LucasArts 90s classics, and I've only ever heard people speak about it with warm-hearted glee. And in the year it came out, 1998, don't you know, it even won such awards as Adventure Game of the Year by PC Gamer and Best Adventure Game of the Year from IGN. So it certainly has some credentials behind it, and, most importantly, I thought it looked original and funny as hell, so I set out to discover what exactly makes it so beloved. Now, before I get into Grim Fandango itself, I do need to address some of my feelings regarding the point-and-click genre, since this is my first review on one of these kind of games. Okay, so first, a serious moment here. I really do truly admire this genre, since they put the player's focus not on huge set pieces or explosive action, but on discovery, on discovering what can be achieved through simple, restrictive controls, and that is a ballsy decision to make, and I got a lot of respect for them. The potential for creativity and breakthroughs are at an all-time high here, and seeing what new sort of twist that they put on this genre is always interesting to see. However, these games do run the risk of being too easy or hellishly difficult, both of which can be boring in their own way. And now, I've got a pretty strict playstyle policy when it comes to the puzzles in these kind of games. In the past, I've been extremely dismissive of getting any help or using any guides, since I used to think that the whole point of these games was to try to overcome whatever kind of logic puzzles they put forward. And yet, I have come to understand through many years of growing up and fucking up, that not every game deserves to be held to some sort of noble gentleman's code of honor, you know? I have played some utterly ridiculous filth in the past, and I am over torturing myself. So now I only look up guides when I feel it is absolutely necessary, or if I feel the game is becoming too unfair. The romantic side of me wants to say that I should never look up anything, and that I should muster through no matter what. But here's the thing, I am not simply playing this for fun anymore. This isn't just my spare time. I am here to review the game, which means that I need to hold it to some standards, and, being the cold-hearted reviewer that I am, I have set a limit on the amount of bullshit that I am willing to put up with. So if I ever feel like the game is purposefully wasting my time with sloppy puzzles or utter nonsense, then I believe there is no shame in looking things up or getting any sort of help. I'm simply here to review how well the game presents itself, and if it becomes too hard to be understood, well, the thing is, that's not my problem. I would much rather have a game that's far too easy than one that's too hard. At least if things are too easy, then I can still experience the whole game. But, thankfully, I did not have to look up any of the answers to the puzzles in Grim Fandango, which makes me want to say huzzah! But oh... oh, I can't. Oh, do I have some strong words about the logic of some parts of this game. Ooh, some very strong and cruel and righteous words at the audacity of some of these puzzles. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, I'm getting far too fired up too soon. I better cool myself off thinking about the amazing characters, the delightful writing, the soothing music, and the grand structure of the plot. Whew. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one, folks. Okay. Here we go. Let us find out definitively once and for all if Grim Fandango Remastered is truly good or bad. Oh, there are so many wonderful things I want to talk about, but before I start falling over myself to get to my favorite part of the game, I just have to say that the game looks great. I'm playing the remastered PC version, which comes with some enhanced lighting and high-resolution character models, and they come together to make some very visually appealing moments. The backgrounds and cutscenes are, as far as I can tell, the same as the original 1998 release, but I don't feel like the developers needed to upgrade all the visuals since it looks pretty good even today. However, this does mean that sometimes high-resolution characters will be moving through noticeably outdated scenery, but the disjointed nature of these moments don't bother me at all. The soundtrack is also so delightful. It ranges from a snazzy upbeat trumpeting to a boisterous big band clamor to this ominous and somber mood that just hangs over everything. It's awesome. I can dig it. There are no particular classics in the soundtrack, nothing that you're going to feel compelled to listen to over and over again, but you know, that's okay. They're all good enough. It's comfortable. It's a nice, pleasant way to while away your time within this grim Fandango. But now enough of all that, let's finally get to talking about my favorite thing about the game, the best part, our protagonist, Manny Calavera. Oh, he is the true standout feature of Grim Fandango and might just be one of my favorite protagonists of all time. Definitely top 5. He's just so charming and smart and relatable and silly and cool that having him as our protagonist made even the most frustrating segments of the game considerably more easy to bear. He's just so charismatic and grounded and all around a wonderfully written character, and I said character because he isn't just a one-note good guy, you know, not someone who's just unflinchingly nice or kind or funny. He is a clearly complex, multifaceted individual with his own goals and conflicting loyalties and best of all, sassy personality. He visibly, noticeably grows throughout the plot and is affected emotionally by what occurs. But it really is Tony Plana, and I hope I'm saying that right, Plana? It's his performance as Manny that truly elevates him to the status of a legendary figure. Tony just expresses pain, remorse, chagrin, and excitement so fantastically that even if you end up hearing some of his lines more than you would ever care to...
I don't really want to do that. Not picking that up. I don't want to mess up my blade. It's huge. That wouldn't be a very good use of this special ceremonial bread. Not picking that up. My scythe. I like to keep it next to where my heart used to be. I don't need the hernia. I don't really want to do that. I don't want to mess up my blade. I don't want to bust all that. That's not on fire.
His line deliveries alone make the game highly enjoyable.
Beloved Sandspoof, this regal and majestic feline, was a record holder for speed and a favorite of the crowds here in Rubacava for many years until her career was suddenly and tragically cut short on the second week of the racing season when the airship Olivia 1 on its maiden voyage crashed onto the track mid-race and exploded. Many bereaved fans testified later that before the blimp hit, Sandspoof was in the lead.
Myself, eating through your brain.
Dig this real!
Interness, confuse yourselves. Lugubrious. Clambake, the cracks in my skull.
Painkiller! Pain! Killer! Turning the battleship!
In the slaughterhouse of my soul.
Scooby-Dah.
But really, the whole cast does an amazing job, and I am particularly fond of the coat check girl Lupe. She is just so frickin' cute. I don't know what it is, I know she's supposed to be annoying, but man, I just find her adorable.
Hi, Manny! I have to tell you about my new organizational system for the coats.
And sure, Glottis's loud talking can get a little grating, but it's still fun and never overdone to the point of being outright annoying. They knew when to tone it down. But even better than just having one great voice cast, we've got different language recordings, which are a surprising treat as well. I was utterly delighted to see how easy it is to flip between the different languages, and quite frequently I would find myself hearing a funny line delivery in English and then going into the menu just to hear what the other recordings are like. I was particularly fond of the French and German acting, but none of them are outright awful. Yes, the Italian cast needed some better microphones, but I'm pretty sure these are the original recordings from over 20 years ago, so I'll cut them some slack. But the real treat about the different language acting comes from how different the references are. In one particularly memorable moment, I had Manny try to scare away some pigeons with a balloon animal, which in the English dub was referencing Robert Frost, a notable English poet, but in the other languages, they seemed to feel that their respective native-speaking populations weren't going to get the Frost reference, so instead they went with a few other interesting choices. And here they are.
Palomas, corred! Es Gloria Fuertes!
Lauft, ihr verbrecherischen Tauben! Es ist Sherlock Holmes!
Fuggite, piccioni! È Sigmund Freud!
C'est le capitaine d'Ectoplasme!
Fujam pombos, é o Sherlock Holmes!
So delightful. I love it. Although, if you actually want to hear some of these voice lines repeated in the different languages, you better be saving pretty often because, unfortunately, much of the dialogue cannot be run through again. A couple times I would accidentally click on my mouse or hit the spacebar while someone was talking, and I would skip past the line, and I'd have to reload a recent save just to hear what I'd missed. This means that you really have to be paying attention to everything everyone is saying, because some really important information is only said once. This can be troublesome because if you get stuck, some of the biggest hints and clues are not reiterated. Which I guess is fine enough, but if you put the game down for more than a few days, you're probably going to forget some critically important point, and you may need to reload an old save just to get yourself properly immersed again. I really wish Manny would talk to himself more often, because having his inner monologue as a way of giving the player hints would have been greatly appreciated. And yes, he does comment on just about anything in his inventory, but his lines are always emphasizing something funny about the objects rather than anything helpful. And boy does Grim Fandango hate the idea of giving hints. Ugh, it does not hold your hand in the slightest, and that left me feeling more than a bit abandoned at times. I mean, for example, the game really wants you to put your cursor over every little teeny tiny thing, because sometimes interactable objects will be right next to each other, and you're not quite sure if the cursor is still lingering over one object or if there's two objects next to each other. It gets a little confusing. Sometimes objects that you think are part of the background are actually very important tools. This is especially true with the hole punch, this stupid ashtray, and the medicine cabinet in the tattoo office. I found that switching between the remastered textures and the original ones would sometimes reveal things that I thought were just background set pieces. But hey, come on, how is the actual pointing and clicking? You know, it's pretty simple. Does it work? Tell us, Gunslinger, does it work? And I'm here to tell you, it works! Almost well enough, almost, because it took me a while to realize that there was a run button. That's right, I didn't know because they didn't tell me, or at least I don't remember them telling me. When the area started to open up and get ever bigger, Manny was still just walking casually everywhere, just strolling along, and I was dreading how much time I'd have to spend just seeing him walk casually between the screens. I got things to do, Manny, come on. But I went into the options and found that yes, there is a run button, and man, my playtime could have easily been doubled, if not tripled, if I had not found it. But even knowing that you can run, it is a pain in the ass to have to hold down the run button the entire game. And yes, I know that there's a lot of games that make you do that, but I don't know, for Grim Fandango, the run button is shift, and it's just kind of, I don't know, I didn't like having my pinky on the shift button the whole time. Yes, I could have bound it to my keyboard, but I didn't, I'm sorry. Oh man, even knowing that you can run, you know, it's a pain in the ass. And this is the thing, I really like having auto run options. I like to just be able to say, okay, look, you know I'm going to be holding down the run button forever. Can I just auto run, please? It really gets in my bonnet that these games don't have an auto run button. Ugh, I know it's a personal problem, but I don't like it. It should have been a priority in the remastered checklist. At least give me the option. Come on, throw me a bone. But I'm also not a fan of how you have to cycle through your inventory. You can't see everything at a glance. Manny has to reach into his coat pocket and pull out what he has one at a time. And when you've got over 7 or 8 objects knocking around in your pocket, it becomes more than a little annoying to try to find the one thing you're looking for. But enough of the technical stuff for now. What is the game actually about? Well, you are placed in the snazzy shoes of Manny Calavera, which is a fitting name since a calavera is a representation of a skull, ooh, spooky. And you have to join him on an epic journey through the land of the dead. The world is a mixture of crime noir aesthetics and Mayan Aztec beliefs, and these things mesh together surprisingly well. It's a very work-a-day sort of world, and Manny's quest begins in a very self-centered position. Manny works for a travel agency that sells modes of transportation to the recently deceased, and his hope is to get enough clients who are extremely virtuous in life and sell them convenient and expensive modes of transportation for their journey through the underworld, and make enough off of his commissions to buy his own ticket out of limbo and move on to paradise. Manny doesn't start off as a chosen one, he just wants some more fulfilling work and to help people get through to a better afterlife, and it's incredible that everything builds off a main character, just some schmuck wanting to get better at his job. But everyone seems to just be a cog in this unknowable machine, and it's darkly hilarious to think that even in death you might have to go back to working a cubicle job. It's a sort of classic American dream story. You know, you're told that if you just work hard enough and put enough time and sacrifice all of your guts, that your efforts will be rewarded. But much like the American dream, Manny is up against forces that seek to take advantage of his goodwill and hard work and fuck him over. Nothing is quite what it seems, and discovering how this society of dead people works and then seeing them subvert those rules with wacky set pieces and interesting characters is delightful. Probably the most imaginative and visually creative moment comes right near the beginning when Manny goes to the land of the living, and oh my god, this is brilliant! The collages, the disjointed landscape, and the hyper-exaggerated 1950s Americana decor make the land of the living feel like a confusing jumble of disorder, totally not like the actual land of the living, am I right? Boys? It is a perfect contrast to the land of the dead, which is so humdrum and buckled down. I could not stop laughing at this shit. It is utterly, truly brilliant.
Bound only by the paper-thin wrapper of mortality, a soul here lies, struggling to be free, and so it shall, thanks to a bowl of bad gazpacho and a man named Calavera. I can't reap hamburger, cows are a whole other bureau, not to mention the lettuce.
Unfortunately, right after this highlight is where I hit my first roadblock. The process you have to go through to steal a contract from your corporate rival is extremely involved. Just when I thought I'd gotten through one brain-busting logic puzzle, it turns out this was just the first step in a massive mousetrap situation. Ugh. And you know, if the game was just hard all the way through, that would be one thing, but the game's difficulty is all over the damn place. Some things are extremely, almost condescendingly easy. Like, okay, for example, you get a picture of some guy's estranged wife, who may or may not have already come and gone from the area, so he says go check it out. And so you just gotta take this picture to the only other person in the area that you can show things to. You show him the picture, say, hey, has she been by here? He says yes. You take that picture back to the original guy, and bam, it's over. You get to move on to the whole next chapter. It is far too simple to be an end of chapter puzzle and feels more than a bit anticlimactic. But that little wet fart is quickly forgotten because guess what? It's time to skip ahead forward a full year. Yeah, that's right, the game will move time ahead in great leaps. Each year you come back on the Day of the Dead to see what's going on, and it does this multiple times. And I was always interested to discover what Manny and the gang had been up to during my absence. The best time skip has to be the first one, because Manny establishes himself as the owner of a high-stakes casino in the very same place he was wiping floors the year before. That's awesome. You gotta give Manny some credit. He is one hell of a manager. This gives the cast a feeling of autonomy, that they are actually growing and doing interesting things even if you aren't around. So the sense of discovery never actually leaves the game, because just when you get used to one area and one sort of setup, everything jumps ahead to a new normal and you have to see what's going down. Although I was more than a bit sad that, you know, when you come back to the casino zone at Rubacava in a later chapter, you cannot check in with everyone. It was a huge bummer. I was used to seeing what our friends were up to, and not getting to see Lupe or the worker bees was a giant letdown. R.I.P. Lupe. It really is the second year area that contains the bulk of the puzzles. It's quite greedy, it hogs everything. The amount of screens this place has are enormous, and just there's so much puzzle crap you have to deal with. Rubacava, you got it all, good and bad. But if you can get through the Rubikava segment, you've pretty much beaten the game. It never really gets harder than this. The third year might actually be the easiest, but it goes by so quickly compared to the slow pace of the second year, so it feels very rushed. The third year also kinda sucks because it has one of the central bad guys just straight up monologue the whole overarching scheme they've got going on, and everything is laid bare without you having to really uncover any truly dark hidden secret. They just sort of go, well, you know, if you haven't figured it out by this point, dumbass, well, here you go. It's just a bit too casual and dismissive for me, and yeah, it might be sort of harkening back to like a James Bond sort of villain who likes to just sort of explain the whole plot, but I don't know, I kinda wanted to like feel like a detective and just uncover things, but whatever, guy. The final year is just utterly beautiful, and aside from one or two weird bumps in difficulty, I really have nothing bad to say about it. It's really the beginning and the end of this game that cannot be touched and fill me with a comfortable sense of satisfaction. So here's the thing. I don't really play these games to blaze through them. I do want to be challenged and feel like I've stepped into the mind of the developer. When I can see those pieces fall together and I understand what the developer was going through without having to tell me, when we become of one mind, that binds us together in a common human experience, and it is so powerful when it comes together. I love it. However, if the developers unknowingly rely too much on their foreknowledge of creating the puzzle, if they see it for easier than it actually is, then they risk losing connection to the players who are seeing the puzzle for the very first time, and I unfortunately feel like that happened a couple times in the game. My own philosophy for these situations is the following. I believe that if the surrounding experience, the characters, the story, and the music are all enjoyable, then I will push through whatever stupid puzzle is before me. But if the challenge itself gets in the way and starts to majorly decay my enjoyment of the game, then I'm going to start to get really mad and start throwing things. Overcoming the puzzles should feel satisfying because we should be rewarded with more of the good stuff, the world and the characters, you know? And you know, while I would be willing to give some of the trickier puzzles the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, they went a bit overboard in trying to make the solutions not obvious, whatever. But the most unforgivable, laughable, and outright embarrassing moments of the game comes in the petrified forest. First of all, the flaming beavers block your path. Yes, beavers! Did I fucking stutter? Beavers. If you spray the beavers with a fire extinguisher, they will run over to one of their other little beaver buddies and reignite themselves. Smart little fucks. So I thought, okay, what if they're in the tar and I put them out? Will they get stuck? No. They just kind of come out of the tar and run over to them anyway. Stupid bastards. Okay, fine. You want to know the solution? It's a classic fire beaver removal technique. Here's what you do. You gotta grab a bone, and then you gotta take the bone and lure the beavers into the tar. And then, when the beavers go to satisfy their bone lust and they jump off this little cliff thing, you spray the beavers with a fire extinguisher and put them out. Yes! You cannot put the beavers out and trap them in the tar river, except you can. They don't get stuck in the tar when you spray them, except when they do. Face planting in the tar seems to be the key. Oh, and that one beaver that was hanging in the back to line up his buddies, the one that I could get to even though I'm pretty sure the game didn't want me to, he's gone now. Yeah, even though, you know, I could reach him, he couldn't be put out before, he just fucking disappears, fine, whatever. That is just lovely. But this is just the appetizer. This is just here to slate your palate, my friends. No, the true Goliath issue, the overwhelming sea of bullshit stems and flows ever flowingly from this room. This room with all the Scooby-Doo holes. That's right, this one that has a classic gag where you go through one hole and you come out the other. Ho ho! Typical tomfoolery. So I thought, hey, maybe there's a sequence that I just gotta discover, okay? So I tried going through all the tubes, I tried to find a pattern, but it's nothing. That's right, there's nothing. This is a red herring. This is a red herring. The real solution, the real shit that you have to do, the real thing, the solution, the savior of this puzzle is a road sign. Yes, a road sign. Earlier, the road sign was just a little nothing. It was just a set piece. You couldn't do anything but read it, because it's a fucking sign. You couldn't pick it up. You couldn't slather it in beaver jizz. You can't do anything with it. That is, until Glottis bumps into it with his car, which is just a stupid little gag, right? Doesn't mean anything, but no, that is the signal to go over to the sign, inspect it, pick it up, and use it as a divining rod to discover the secret underground passageway that leads you to a key that you can pick up through a weird force perspective. I'm like super far away, but I can still pick it up. What the fuck? What is this? Those cave holes? The cave holes, merely a pointless distraction. The sign is the savior. The sign, which you thought was just like any other normal sign because it never gives you any indication that it was anything more. It is a sign, it is nothing. The only reason that I even looked at this sign was because I brought my sister in to look at how badly I was stuck. I was mere moments away from looking up a guide when, completely through bald-ass luck, I got close enough to the sign to see that there was a camera angle change. And nothing else changed. And it showed nothing else but the sign on the screen, and I thought, wait, it wouldn't just change the camera angle for nothing, there must be something here. But it doesn't happen unless you go up to the sign and examine it, and there's no reason to. It's bullshit. Me and my sister were both so gobsmacked by the audacity, the utter gall to make the progression hinge on something so bland, so unremarkable, something that just completely blends into the background because it's just a fucking road sign. Why would anyone ever think to look at that more than once? Good Lord, it makes me want to weep. Last thoughts on difficulty. I would say the game starts off at a gentle escalation in the beginning few hours. It shoots up dramatically once you leave the main city, becomes a bloated mess for much of the second year, hits its stride and presents a perfect balance in the third year, and the final year starts off a little difficult, but the elegance of that last chapter, the beauty on display in those last 15 minutes are just untouchable. It is amazing, and it almost makes me forget about the bullshit it took to get here. There are times where I was so insistent on not looking up any walkthroughs that I ended up just clicking around on random screens or different, dialogue selections out of pure frustration that I just was like guessing. I was like, please, can I just get through this? I don't feel like I'm actually accomplishing anything. I get it. I'm too stupid to understand. Just please, mercy. I just sort of clicked around until the game felt bad enough and let me go. Going through the whole game without using a walkthrough, being bullheaded like that was extremely difficult, and I just gotta say, if you are unwilling to use a guide, if you just need to stick purely to what the game presents to you, then you better be prepared to run around large areas for hours trying to figure out what single piece of the puzzle you are missing. I would highly suggest looking things up, because if you are stuck for more than an hour, it's probably not going to get much better, and you are going to start getting really mad at the game and start feeling resentful, and that's when the game is working as intended. Don't even get me started on when it is not, when the game starts to fuck up on its own, because I gotta be honest with you guys, the game crashed on me like 5 times, and it bugged out in this weird way in the Petrified Forest. Of course it's the Petrified Forest. It did this weird sort of like light, dark thing. I don't know what was happening. I got like stuck, like Manny disappeared. I don't know what was happening, and it was weird. I got stuck in this room and I couldn't leave. And later, Glottis got stuck in a turning cycle that nearly soft-locked the game. The Glottis turn glitch was easily repeatable, which is very damning, and ate up a full 5 minutes before he was able to break free. I timed it. It took 5 minutes for him to just turn around. Jesus. There are so many glitches and problems with character models flickering on things, and this would be a non-issue if the game wasn't marketed as the remastered version. If I was just playing the original 90s version of the game, these glitches would, not be forgivable, but they'd be understandable. This wouldn't be something that I would harp on the game about, but it's the fact that they are marketing it as a remastered version, the definitive version of the game, and have made such notable improvements, and yet somehow they still made such big, glaring problems. And I don't know if just like a minimal crew was brought in to fix the game, or if these problems were deliberately left in for nostalgic LOLs. And if we were just talking about, like, I don't know, Manny's arm getting bent backwards in the gambling booth, then I wouldn't care. I would say that's a glitch that's reasonable to leave in. But some of these more serious problems begin to wear on my patience, and I am sure that just doing any basic run-through of the game would have shown these glitches to the playtesters. I mean, if I'm encountering these issues on my very first ever playthrough of the game, then what sort of fucked up development team just said, hey, let's approve the game in this sort of state? I mean, come the fuck on. If there's one word I would use to describe the overall experience of Grim Fandango Remastered, it would be sloppy. It is an extremely unpolished experience, but has enough charm and charisma that I really want to overlook its flaws. But here's the thing, I have nailed games to the wall for less than this, and it is not like the game is a huge, gigantic, sprawling game with a lot of moving parts or anything to worry about. It's just a damn point and click. Come the fuck on. In this case, it's the gameplay that inhibits the story, which is a terrible sin considering how amazing the story is. When I think of the bullshit moments that are in the middle of this game, I want to shake my fist and scream and kick and yell and get really mad at the game for having such big problems and wasting my time. But when I reflect on the beginning and end of this game, I am brought nearly to tears, to fucking tears, at the authenticity and heartfelt emotions on display, seeing these people come to terms with the uncertainty of life and death, and how all friendships must inevitably one day end, and the overwhelming triumph of good over evil. It really is beyond brilliant. It is amazing. If I was just reviewing the elegant story, the snazzy music, and the memorable aesthetics, if this was just me talking about the epic quest of Manny Calavera kicking ass and taking names, then I easily would have labeled it as one of the best point-and-click adventure games of all time. But it is a game, and it is at times an embarrassingly flawed, frustrating, glitchy, broken, nonsensical, and enraging game to play. The ridiculousness of some of the puzzles, paired with the poor execution of this severely lacking remaster, means that I must come down hard on one of the best, most original games I have played in many years. But when I step away from having to interact with it, like if I just look through the cutscenes and the screenshots and start chilling out to the soundtrack, it becomes really easy to start feeling good about it and forget about all the bad shit that you gotta endure, so it's definitely a game that is better remembered and watched than it is played. It's the sort of game that I have a lot of love for, but I am going to label it as bad. Thankfully, being bad does not mean that I hate it or wish it didn't exist. I truly enjoyed my time in the game, for the most part. It is just that the negatives have so viciously dragged down the positives that they tarnish one of the best narratives and outstanding characters ever. Put it this way, I love Manny Calavera, but I do not believe Manny Calavera would want to play this game. And that says it all right there. Grim Fandango Remastered. A bad game, but one I like to keep next to where my heart used to be.
With bony hands, I hold my partner. On soulless feet, we cross the floor. The music stops, as if to answer. An empty knocking at the door. It seems his skin was sweet as mango when last I held him to my breast, but now we dance this grim fandango, and will for years before we rest.